Good evening. My name is Vinny Taylor, and this video is a demand and request for reparations for all black Americans. Reparations is long overdue, and 400 plus years of terrorism, kidnapping, slavery, and murder of black Americans is enough. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's time for America to atone for all of its sins and crimes committed against black Americans and black people in general. Reparations in the sum amount of $3 million per black citizen. Reparations equals real justice and real peace. I want to point out that $3 million per black American is a number that will be negotiated along with the 40 acres of land. It's a starting point that will be negotiated from and to a lesser amount. It's a means to a satisfactory consensus. I'd also like to point out, from the result of future reparations, businesses will grow exponentially. Consumer purchases will rapidly increase in the housing market, the building supplies market, including rapid increases in sales of home appliances, home furnishings, and automobiles. Reparations will in fact boost the economy in every way, shape, form, and fashion. And with that, I'd like to also add to this video the letter that I had written to our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, in 2015. And it reads, "You being a lawyer, Juris Doctor, and our nation's first black lady, knows that black lives matter, and American history and on up to this present day know and understand what black people today and in the past went through, especially our ancestors. Instead of 12 years a slave, it was 400 years of slavery, terrorism, rape, castration, kidnapping, murder. And if the shoe was on the other foot and we were the former slave masters and the oppressors, white people would have back then and today would be filing class action lawsuits left and right, suing the U.S. government and all of its 50 states for monetary damages to receive financial reparations. Miss First Lady, coming from a family who worked hard all their life, and you experiencing firsthand what it's like to see your parents struggle to maintain the very existence of living life and the struggle to support a family, as we all do, a struggle for existence. You know firsthand what that's like, and you've heard the pleas and concerns of other people's hardships and struggles to survive in this cruel world. So I humbly ask you, isn't it high time for all native citizen-born black Americans to receive U.S. government reparations / monetary compensation? How much, I asked. In the range and between $4 million to $2 million to $1.3 million to $1.2 million, and 40 acres of land, a John Deere tractor with farming accessories, and 4 years of free college tuition, including housing for all those who want to attend, with the option to opt out and receive the college tuition money instead. For all those who do not wish to go back to school or are in their golden years and don't have the aptitude to attend college, could receive the value of the college tuition in money. And I also pointed out that all reparations and awards should be deposited into a government banking institution and from that into a debit card. For example, a direct express banking debit card, which is being currently used today, or an entirely different government banking card used only to award those individuals eligible to receive reparations, like the Native American Indians, for example, who are receiving government reparations. But a banking debit card specifically for native-born Black Americans who are not ashamed to be Black, who are not ashamed to be the descendants of slaves, who are not ashamed to embrace their Black heritage. Our time is now to receive what has been denied to us as a Black people and Black nation, all of our generations. It's time for America to pay us what they owe us. Instead of white people in government and abroad throwing the slave word in our faces and in the history books and how this great nation called America was built on the backs of slaves, they need to be throwing a lot of money our way so we can come up too. Miss First Lady, you know this as well as we know this. Black people are tired of struggling to achieve and maintain the good life, the American dream. We work hard to get what white folks have today, or we work hard to live a decent life, and yet we get nowhere. What little we have today doesn't or is insufficient to supply our needs for the year, let alone inequality in the workplace and abroad. We should be on the same abundant financial status that white folks are today, if not more, because of the evil and wicked crimes of humanity their ancestors inflicted upon ours, including the offspring born from them who still commit such crimes of oppression, racial profiling, discrimination, and repression, modern-day lynchings, mass incarceration. It has to stop. Police brutality. It has to stop. And the only best way to do that is to award us monetary financial apology compensation. Thank you, First Lady, for your time in reading this cover letter and the enclosure inside. God bless you and your family. The end. As you can see, the date, September 28, 2015. And it's definitely a 7-page letter that I wrote not only to her husband, but to many members of Congress, as I also pointed out in my part 1 and part 2 videos on YouTube, Reparations for All Black Americans. I wrote these letters back then to not only President Obama and the First Lady, but I also had written their senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, and back then Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who is now the Majority Leader. And after this, I have since wrote her again many times, as well as Chuck Schumer, Congressman John Lewis, Senator Cory Booker, and Speaker of the House then, Paul Ryan, who's no longer there. I've written many major news networks, black and white people who support this great endeavor. So I've written many letters, and I've also written the ACLU, and I asked them in regards to this in filing a class action lawsuit against the United States government and all its 50 states who participated in the malicious, heinous crimes of slavery, rape, terrorism, murder, and genocide of American black people. So there you have it. This is a 7-page letter. And I've written many more letters after 2015, as I've also mentioned in my first 2 YouTube videos, Reparations for All Black Americans, Part 1 and Part 2. Check those out as well. Government reparations. As you can see, to black Americans. Now, I also want to add with this is, and I did not even know that this was in the news, but it's, as I mentioned in my videos, there are many other entities who have petitioned and are still petitioning for reparations for black Americans. And these are even white Americans are in the cause in support of this endeavor. People like Vlad TV. That's a gentleman on there who hosts Vlad TV. That's VLAD TV. And he even mentioned himself, he was a critic of reparations for black people. As far as where's the money going to come from? How's this going to get paid? How's that going to get paid? And then when he actually seen how quick and efficient the government issued emergency funds during this pandemic to all of those who are unemployed, just that quick, without a blink of an eye. No one even mentioned the fact how's it going to get paid. Everybody received their money, and it was millions, trillions of dollars in a blink of at a drop of a hat. So yes, the government has the money. That's no question. There's no doubt about that. And it just goes to show that they can pay reparations. You know, I mean, that amount is nothing. And like I said in my other 2 videos on YouTube, it doesn't go against the deficit. It's an imaginary line the deficit is, because in the 17 and 1800s, when they first created the Fed, it's a measuring stick to measure how much the government is spending. But everything like military jets that cost billions of dollars, and ships and aircraft carriers, all the money that's spent on that, on all the military equipment, does not go against the deficit. Black Ops, which is a secret, it's more secret than the CIA. It's called Black Ops. And money for that is tremendous. And it doesn't go against the deficit. All monies that have something to do with the government and the military and the intelligence forces and departments, money spent on that doesn't go against the deficit. It doesn't count. A deficit is an imaginary line. Like I said in my last 2 videos, don't believe the hype. When people start kicking the word, how's this going to get paid and how's that going to get paid, that's a bunch of baloney. They're just haters, especially when it comes to giving reparations to black Americans. Because they didn't mention how, the critics did not mention back then when Reagan was in office, how the money, or where was the money going to come from to award the Japanese reparations, which he did. No one said anything about that. How's it going to get paid? No one. Reparations was awarded to the Japanese for the bombings of Hiroshima that the United States did to them. And murder and terrorism, and they got paid. They got their reparations. No one said nothing. So why is it that when black people are endeavoring and striving to achieve what was essentially owed to us in the first place, why is the Europeans in the government complaining about it? Or those in the news networks, hating. And it's evil, it's wicked, It's evil, it's wicked. And as a matter of fact, my personal opinion is that's why what's happening today in America is happening. Because America thinks they can just sweep what they did to our ancestors underneath the rug and go on about their business as if it never happened, or, oh, it happened, but we can't do anything about it. Oh, no. You got to atone. America has to atone for its sins. You just can't sweep it underneath the rug nonchalantly and just, go about your business and think everything's all right and just think that we're supposed to accept it. We've been pulling our bootstraps up and going ahead with life, But the Almighty God says you just can't sweep your sins underneath the rug for all the crimes that was committed against black people and not atone for the injustices and the crimes that was committed back then and that have continued up to this very day, still being committed against black people. And with that, I'm going to continue reading about reparations for those who don't really understand and for those who do understand and, say, well, why? Why do we have to do this? You don't have to do nothing. It's the government that has to do something. And it's those who support it and still support oppression of black people. America has to be accountable. It's called accountability. They love that word. Accountability. They always throw that word around when it comes to other nations. When they do wrong, they have to account. Right now, America's trying to make China be accountable for the COVID pandemic. So America needs to be accountable too for what they've done to our ancestors and what they continue to do to black people today, to this very day. America has to be accountable. And with that, I'm going to continue reading from the Atlantic Star. And it's called The Case for Reparations. 40 acres and a mule would cost America at least $6.4 trillion today. You know how that's going to be? And you know where they got that number from? Well, here you go. I'm going to read it to you right now. There you go. You can Google this. You can find out the information yourself. From the Atlantic Black Star. And it says by Tracy. And I had no idea this was in here. By David A. Love. If you were to guess how much the United States owes black people in economic damages for slavery, how much would it be? In the part of the I Have a Dream speech that no one seems to remember, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. declared, "It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. This is what Martin Luther King said. While some people would conclude that no dollar or amount can make up for the centuries that black people were kidnapped, enslaved, and forced to work without pay, the fact remains that our misfortune made America wealthy. Slavery built the system of U.S. capitalism. Moreover, some people have estimated what the nation actually owes black people. And it goes on and continues. Reparations. It begins with a calculation that King made if America would stand by its promise. If America would stand by its promise, that's a promise America made to black people. That if America would stand by its promise of 40 acres and a mule, which is $20 a week since the late 1700s for 4 million slaves, the total was $800 billion, which in today's dollars is $6.2 trillion. Just to put it in perspective, this year's federal budget is projected at $3.9 trillion. U.S. gross domestic product in 2014 was $17.4 trillion. So this sounds like a significant deal of money, except for the fact that this is a conservative estimate. A conservative estimate. Other calculations are far higher. For example, as the infographic shows, the National Legal and Policy Center placed reparations at $15 trillion, which would involve paying $500,000 to every slave descendant. Now let me read that again. For example, as the infographic shows, the National Legal and Policy Center placed reparations at $15 trillion, which would involve paying $500,000 to every slave descendant. Time magazine columnist Jack White estimated that blacks are owed $24 trillion, which amounts to unpaid wages denied to 10 million slaves, doubled for pain and suffering with interest. Further, Dr. Dennis G. Rancourt, a former physics professor at the University of Ottawa, determined the minimum amount of reparations is $59.2 trillion. He calculated that value of the stolen labor, which was $3.7 trillion, or 2 million slaves working 10 hours a day, 365 days a year for 70 years between 1790 and 1860 at a rate of $7.25 an hour, applying a 2% interest rate compounded annually. He reached the $59.2 trillion figure. And that was an estimate of every slave working up to 70 years. They worked until their death. Without question, there is a strong case for reparations. The institution of slavery created the economic basis for modern capitalism and turned the U.S. into the wealthiest nation in the world. New York was built on cotton, the crop that dominated the international markets in the 1800s. As the city collected 40 cents of every dollar earned in the cotton trade. It also transformed into a financial center. So, as the markets in the 1800s increased and the city collected 40 cents of every dollar earned in the cotton trade, transforming it into a financial center, moreover, at the start of the Civil War, slaves were worth 48% of the wealth of the South, more than all the banks, factories, and railroads in the country combined. Meanwhile, the government paid reparations to slave owners, but not to black people themselves. Rather, America maintained a convict lease system that swept up black men and created a new form of slavery in the southern prisons. The black codes were designed to impede black progress and keep whites ahead of the game through discriminatory practices. Special fees for black people discouraged us from owning businesses, and high interest rates hindered the building of black wealth. In addition, segregation and racist policies have prevented black people from benefiting from government programs that were made available to whites. As a result, the black share of national wealth changed very little between 1865, 0.5%, and 1990, 1.0%, with very little for us to pass down to future generations. In addition, the wealth gap between blacks and whites has not changed since 1970. Policies have kept black people underwater and whites afloat and thriving on purpose. This is why reparations make so much sense. And this is what white privilege looks like. True racism exists not only in the offensive remarks and epithets hurled by individual whites at black people on a daily basis, but it is more importantly in the systems of oppression that stack the deck and rig the game. Whites mistakenly believe that racism is a thing of the past, and that slavery is something that occurred long ago from which they derive no benefit. However, there is a continuum of racial discrimination that extends from slavery times up until now, with mass incarceration and the war on drugs creating a new form of enslavement for black people. White folks have inherited the wealth and privilege derived from free black labor, which they willingly enjoy today. Similarly, blacks have inherited and continue to face the efforts of this rigged game, which continues into the present day, even as we have struggled and resisted this system and attempted to build for themselves, ourselves. Every year since 1989, Representative, who I've mentioned plenty of times, John Conyers, Democrat of Michigan, has introduced H.R. 40, a bill which calls for a commission to study reparations. In April, the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, or IBW, led by Dr. Ron Daniels, held an international conference in New York with participants from 20 countries and throughout the diaspora discussing global reparations strategies. As for the estimating the price tag, this is one way to continue the discussion and bring home the gravity of the issue. And I've already brought out the price tag. I've already disclosed reparations in dollar amount per black American citizen. So there's no need to go through that part because I've already disclosed it to you. And here it is. $1.3 $3 million per Black American citizen. No less than 1.2. 4 years free college tuition, books included, John Deere tractor with farming accessories and tools included, and 40 acres of land and a John Deere tractor, as I've also mentioned before. And here's the ice cream on the cake. They owe us a lot of money, Dr. King said. They owe us a lot of money. And I've said, America, pay us what you owe us. America, pay us what you owe us. Dr. King is saying, and said then, in that time period, they owe us a lot of money. Dr. King said, and there it is right there in black and white. Dr. King said, they owe us a lot of money. Dr. King said. So there you have it in black and white. If you want to look it up yourself, go to the Atlanta Black Star, and you'll find other entities who also express their views and concerns regarding America. Pay us what you owe us in the form of reparations, monetary damages, compensation, apology payments. It's time to pay up. And with that, I'll close. Protesters out there, keep up the good work. And we need more people to run for the Senate. Change the laws on the books and get things going. Peace and love.